What is up, guys? Today we're discussing My Hero Academia chapter 227, and I just want to dive right into this. The cover spread was nice. Seeing that Toga is for sure out of commission was nice. You get her essentially confirmation that she took way too much damage. She's crawling into a shed. She's going down for the count. I think it's important to note that she seems to be in a secluded area. There's not a lot of action happening. I think she's just going to be out for a while, and I'm okay with that. I think an extreme diff fight is exactly what the MLA needed to solidify themselves as genuine threats to the league, while at the same time allowing the league to show that they have progressed and gained or made gains in the process of training and fighting with Giganto Machia, even if Giganto himself was not necessarily trying to train them so much as he was trying to fold Shigaraki into a pretzel. The reality is that the benefits are still the same. So Toga is down for the count. She comments on the fact that with her arms becoming heavy, with this blood loss, it feels like something she's experienced before, letting us know that Toga herself has had near-death experiences in the past. But not only that, she mentions that she's closer to them. By closer to them, I'm assuming she's referring to the people she's loved in the past and that she's killed. I think that's kind of an interesting take because it shows that even now, even post-death, even post being able to transform into these people, she's able to still have feelings and attachments to them. And you could view her view on death could be, even if she dies to a certain extent, while she wants to live and keep on falling in love with people, if she dies, then she's like the people she's loved already who have died. So I think that's an interesting angle to take, or a potential perspective that might be within the psyche of Toga. Then we cut away to the Re-Destro, and we see Mr. Feelgood Inc. coming in. First of all, he confirms to an extent that Curious should not have been on the front line. She was a valuable asset, but it also kind of seems like she was not necessarily a combatant, which I think is reflected. I think that was already verified within the context of her fight, as well as, she kind of wasn't focused around. She just kind of sent fodder after, the opponent. But I also think that in general that goes to show, if you think about it, she was not very focused on the combat. She was very much wrapped up in the narrative of, getting to interview Toga, getting to do her job, because that was more important to her than necessarily folding her. Now, one of the things that I think that we also need to talk about is how, even though the president of Feelgood Inc. is, a Gorillaz reference and all these other things, he's not exactly the nicest guy. He kind of berates Giron for being shocked that they're doing footage, and he kind of goes in on him about oh, does your brain not work? Are you incompetent? What's the story with this? But more importantly, though, I think we're getting a massive clue to what Re-Destro's quirk is, because as Mr. Feelgood here laments the death of Curious as an individual asset because she's the publisher of Shueisha, Re-Destro here laments the fact that she died and the soldiers died, and he sheds tears for them. He's crying. I'm going to tell you right now, I think Re-Destro has a stockpile type quirk, where the more he cries, the more upset he gets, the more sadness he feels, the more despair he experiences. He can convert that into anger and rage and power, and it will allow him to be stronger. Hence why when he went to snap Beppo's neck, which, by the way, I called him Beppo. I'm wearing my Law hoodie. One Piece made me pretty happy today, so I'm busting up my Heart Pirates gear. But he snaps Beppo's neck, and he's got the Rorschach ink along his face, and then it disappears. And so I think what that is and he cries afterwards. You see the another close-up shot of him crying, and Horikoshi is heavily focused on drawing his characters in such a way, especially Re-Destro, with these tear-jerking moments, in such a way that it looks like an actual photo was taken, or that there's a potential actual camera there, with the fisheye lens earlier when he's telling Giron as he wipes his tears away that Giron lacks imagination. Then you cut away towards the hordes as they're taking on the League of Villains still, and they're going hard at them, and Spinner is talking about how these guys just won't stop coming at them. Dabi says that you haven't taken out a single one yet. I'm not sure if he was talking to Spinner or Twice here, but they both, the line could go either way. Spinner technically doesn't want to be a villain, so it would make sense if he hadn't killed anybody, even though the idea of him not wanting to be a villain and instead being a hero purist, but also running around with a katana and initially a giant sword of swords, little contradictory, but I think that's kind of the point of, you know, the character, because at the end of the day he does have his hangups from being a part of the exclusion, like dealing with exclusion and the discrimination within the Quirk-based society. One of the things though that, you know, Hanabata does is that he pulls up in a campaign van like, yo dog, I got the speakers ready, and he tells everybody that Kiryu-san has died, and everybody's like freaking out. You know, you see like actual horror and dismay on the faces of two of the members of the Liberation Army, and they're asked, what has the leader said, what has our great leader said to do in response to this? And to which he goes, do not let her death be in vain. To which Compress comments, this is more like a religious sect than an army. To which Twice replies, I told you religion was profitable in the official viz, but in fanlations he says, I thought you said religion wasn't profitable. Regardless, the same joke is there, just a different angle and take on it. And it's actually one of my favorite styles of joke because it's a conversational humor. It's something that works within the context of the story, but it does give the reader themselves something to chuckle at. It's a harken back to, I believe, chapter 219, 220, where the Leagues take on the CRC, the creature like the creature rejection cult or whatever they are. I like to call them my heroes KKK, and they got killed, and I thought that was lovely. So you can tell where I stand on those kinds of things. So progressing forward though, you see people, just a huge wave, like an entire mob, they start running at Shigaraki, and this is where things get really interesting in the chapter, because Shigaraki, as these people are charging at him, says, I am so sleepy. Now this is very straightforward, it's logical. He's been awake for, by my estimation, at least 50 hours and 24 minutes, and that's assuming that he wakes up as soon as Giganto Makia wakes up from his 3-hour naps, because Giganto Makia would fight him for 48 hours and 44 minutes, rest for roughly 3 hours, then come back at him. So assuming that Shigaraki wakes up at least 10 minutes early because he doesn't want to, you know, get caught sleeping or groggy when Giganto goes charging him, you could argue that he's been awake for 50 hours and at least like 30 minutes. So he's been up for over 2 days now. But the thing that's interesting here is that, like, as he's looking at them, you see the horde start to morph into, like, not like necessarily an amorphous blob, because especially if you look at the viz, you guys really do need to read the viz, especially for the art, for the translations. It's just a higher quality product. I cannot stress this enough. Support the official translation. It will just make your life better. You can see the details, but he says, I hear sounds that aren't supposed to be there. There's like a sensory overload. There's just a complete frustration with what's happening. And then he does something interesting. He decides to bust out his parkour skills. And after he busts out those parkour skills, he proceeds to just run along a wall. And he takes his palm and grabs the guy by the eyeball and face. And instantly crumbles the entire horde as he just speed blitzes past them. And you just notice that it's just propagating way faster. People are crumbling, legs are flying everywhere. There's a 12-year-old girl with twin tails that gets noticed. Equal opportunity murder is the only murder that is acceptable. And not only that though, you notice that the entire horde of people falls to like dust. The walls that he was on and like the walls next to the crowd fall to dust. He's vomited on already. Father is off of his face, and Spinner notices this and actually kind of goes, wait, did that just propagate through? But even before that, we also get a flashback to Shigaraki's childhood that he says he can't remember. But at the same time, he's having these flashbacks. So clearly he's starting to recall these things. And the flashback shows him talking to his either little or older sister. And her name is Hana, which I think makes sense because, you know, named after the mother of the son that was given away, Nana Shimura, granddaughter Hana Shimura. And she says to him, after showing him a picture of their dad, allegedly, or who I would assume to be their father, with Nana, she says, even though Dad said all those things, I'm still on your side, and I will always be cheering you on, Tenko. The implication, for me at least, in this scene, is that back before all his quirk manifested, before he accidentally one-shot his dog and, you know, crumbled his whole family to dust, he wanted to be a hero. Which means that not only that, which also kind of further explains his distaste towards hero society, honestly. Imagine wanting to be a hero, wanting to save people, and then not only having your power destroy your family, but also having a power that in reality is just not fit for hero work. Oh, hey, I'm a superhero, and my power is I completely destroy everyone I touch, and they get one shot and they die, guaranteed, pretty much. Barring I can subdue them in the way that Overhaul was, for example, so that I can kind of decay part of them, but then cut it off. So not only did he accidentally kill his family, but he also had a quirk that just isn't suited for saving people. And I think that that in of itself is an important thing. I do not think Nana Shimura had the same quirk. I used to think that because of the whole gloves thing, but I genuinely believe that if Shigaraki's quirk was one that was throughout the family, then people would have been more on guard for it as he was approaching the age of 5. Like, people would have expected him to be able to manifest that ability, and they would have been ready for him to accidentally destroy things. And I think that the thing that is important to take away there is that his dad was not supportive of his dreams. I think his dad was very aggressive and told him that he couldn't become a hero and that that was a pipe dream because he realized that Nana died. It's imperative to remember that Shigaraki, one, we've seen early sketches of the character volume, his character page from the volume, so it confirms that he is 20. Deku is 15 upon introduction. Well, not upon introduction, but upon entering UA. So if you cycle back to when Deku was 5, that makes Shigaraki 10. You go back another 5 years, he would have been 5. Deku would have been just being born, but that puts it at 15 years back in the story. The thing is it's important to remember that when Deku was 5, he said it was an old disaster footage from years ago, about 10 years ago, I believe. So from that perspective, it means that All Might would have already inherited it One for All. Thus, Nana Shimura would have already been dead. The fact that he would have known who his mother was means that when his mother fought All for One, he would have seen her die and not wanted that for his children. That being said, it doesn't mean it's okay. And if you remember back to the flashback we got in roughly 221, I want to say, where Shigaraki is talking to Ujiko, and you see like the cutaway, his dad looked kind of like menacing and terrifying, like he was trying to like take him on, or possibly going to hit him or something like that. And one of the things that I want to say is that I do not believe that Shigaraki's quirk propagating is quirk evolution, as people are trying to call it. In the same way that I did not agree with the notion that Toga's quirk was a quirk evolution. And here's why. Some people have mentioned that, you know, it's a mutation type. It's a mutation in the family in the same way that Ares was. I saw Truth Hero mention this, and some people online have talked about this, and they're talking about how the quirk can just become more powerful. The thing is that Rewind and Decay are both emitter class quirks. The other thing to like factor in here is that if Nana had this quirk, when Sukauchi went to look up decay type quirks in the database, there would have been at least some flags. So that's another reason why I think this disproves the idea that that's a familial quirk. But an emitter quirk is supposed to emit. It's supposed to go out. It's not supposed to just be touch. Think about other emitters we've seen in the series. I'm not exactly sure what Tokoyami's quirk is classified as. Probably like a combination of transformation or emitter. But you look at Shoto's, which is like he can expel flames and he can do touch range attacks with ice or range attacks with ice. You have Endeavor, whose flames are launched. You have Dabi, whose flames are launched. You have like Kaminari, who's also an emitter. So it makes sense that at least on some level, if you're an emitter quirk, you would not be reliant on purely physical contact. What I think is happening with Shigaraki is that as he becomes more tired, not only does his, like his senses decay, because every quirk has a drawback, his senses become like, his ability to perceive reality decays the longer he's awake, the more exhausted he becomes. That's why he hears things and sees things that shouldn't be there. But that's also why his repressive mental barriers are decayed. Now, the thing about this arc is liberation. Letting your quirk be exactly what it is, manifesting it to the fullest of its abilities, not holding back, being free. Shigaraki as a boy, after he accidentally no-diffed his entire family and 360 no-scoped them all into oblivion, was wearing gloves and he was terrified of touching anything. So the reality is that that trauma could easily have led to him repressing his quirk and telling himself that the function of it was simply he has to touch the thing and only that thing. And the entire time in his mind, it could be that if I touch this one thing, it decays. And he's been holding himself back. But as he gets more tired, he goes high speed decay, like just max volume, he's actually just kind of emitting more or less like a contagion, similar to purple haze from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but like only from his palm. So as he ran through them, the contagion was kind of emitted as a cloud, and that's why it decayed all the things around it, and that's why legs were flailing and people from across, you know, like that horde was huge. It's a couple people wide. There's people on both sides of it. The wall on the other side of it was obliterated. So if you notice, it's not just one side of the alley. It's here's the wall, here's the mob, here's another wall. The quirk, if it's a contagion beam, as he was running, would have shot from all the way through, all the way down, hitting both walls and spreading and propagating through everyone. So I don't think this is quirk evolution. I think this is a lack of repression in Shigaraki finally cutting loose, especially when you look at the excited look on his face after he threw up. Also, I'm going to point out there are little flecks in his teeth, and that can be two things. It can be either, you know, just like little food particles from vomiting, but I don't think that's what it is. I think it's the second option, which is it's particles of the people he just decayed. And the reason for that is as he's like jumps down, you see there's particles all through the air from, like, you know, all the people that broke apart, and they're blowing past his face anyway. So if a couple land on his teeth as he's, you know, got vomit in his mouth, he's not going to notice. That's the level that Shigaraki's at currently, mentally, to the point where people bits land in his mouth and he just keeps going. So that's my take on that. And we get to like the last bit, and you have Dabi who he says, you know, hey, if our leader's racking up bodies, it's time for me to start doing it too. He almost looks at himself as like equal to or in competition with Shigaraki, but while still being his subordinate. I've always viewed Dabi as the left hand to Shigaraki, whereas Kurogiri was his right because he was his advisor and all these other things. Dabi was the one in charge of the Vanguard Action Squad. Dabi was the one that was given a Nomu. Dabi is the one that Ujiko picked to maintain Hood Chain and trust him to recover it. So overall, I think Dabi is an important member of the League, but I also think that he himself understands that he's an important member of the League. This is where things get fun, though. The guy that attacks Dabi, I'm calling him Captain Ice Climbers for now, makes, you know, big claws of ice, and Dabi goes, ice? Huh. And I think that's especially fitting because we have the hype that he's a potential Todoroki. So if he's Toya, there's one theory floating around that it's possible that Natsuo is Captain Ice Climbers. I'm actually a fan of that theory. I like the idea of Natsuo being an ice climber, not being the ice climber, because it would make sense that both these rebellious spirited boys became a different form of something different to their father, whereas Endeavor did not respect his children's quirks if they were not perfect as Shoto is in his mind. And so from that perspective, you could argue that Natsuo would fall into the Liberation Army due to the idea of chasing the idea of him being free with his quirk, not being looked down upon with his quirk, and being able to use it how he sees fit. And considering the amount of training that Endeavor would put into his kids or force his kids to do, it would make sense if he had dedicated himself to being good with his quirk and it just not mattering. So from this perspective, you could have it be that Dabi, who saw his father as a false hero, eventually adopts Stain's ideology after being beaten and burned and whatever. And Toya goes a different route of all quirks are valid, and you don't need to be the perfect quirk wielder in order to be a valid person. This actually would show the duality in the approach to how you could go against your father while at the same time rebelling, but also having a semi-right view in the sense that it is true that there's a lot of heroes that, like Endeavor himself is questionably a false hero in the sense that he does not live up to those ideals behind closed doors. At least he didn't. And in the same way that he was kind of oppressive towards his family, because if they didn't have the ideal quirks, they weren't worth it to him. It would be a nice twist if it turned out to be Fuyumi, but it's a shonen. I don't know. If any manga could do it, I could see Kohei doing it. I can see Kohei Otoguchi doing it, but I'm not gonna like throw my eggs into the basket of hoping that it's Fuyumi, even though I think that would be a nice twist. I just think that this next fight will kind of play into, you know, the very themes that Shoto's fight had back in, you know, when he fought, you know, with Deku, where he had to learn how to use, you know, both sides of his quirk. You know, he wasn't trying to use the flames, and he was only going to use the ice and all that other stuff. And now this could be the two brothers coming together and clashing with each other, but instead of this one being an extreme diff fight that ends with them both killing each other or trying to kill each other one dead, it could be that they both accept each other as brothers, and that's part of their healing process, and that would lead to a member of the Metal Liberation Army not dying, but instead potentially willingly joining forces with the League of Villains, or vice versa. The idea of these two brothers banding together and their villainy to take down Endeavor eventually could even possibly be on the table. So with that out of the way, I think that that's an interesting direction. I think there's a lot of potential for that. Shoto's fight was all about acceptance of himself and who he was. So if their fight ends up being about acceptance of their places in society and acceptance of each other, then I think that's an excellent way to keep the parallels going, keep the early My Hero thematics being played into My Villain Academia, where, like I said, last fight you had Uraraka and Toga, where they both fought explosive powers, they both had to overcome insurmountable odds, they both went for a meteor shower as the finishing move, and both of them, as they put their hands together and they went for the final victory, focused on winning and being like other people. Toga wanted to become, you know, like the people she loves. Toga wanted to become like, or become all the people she loves, whereas Uraraka was specifically focusing on becoming like Deku. So you've got those parallels there. You've got the potential for parallels between the idea of both of them accepting their birthrights and their inheritances and moving forward and coming together to find a way to deal with that in the future. So let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. If you enjoy my analysis, you think that this is worth hearing and these takes are valuable, like, share, subscribe. I'm just going to keep doing these videos. I've been getting a lot of positive feedback from people who are talking to me, and I just want to, you know, give the community something that they enjoy. I think that My Hero community doesn't have enough people doing like harder analysis, and I think that there's a lot of like shorter videos that are kind of just like recaps, and I just kind of wanted to dive into the psyche of these characters and what I think they have going forward. So, Anaki out.